thank you again so much for not only all of the hard work that you did through Open Enrollment 2022, but in being here to receive some updates from us about things that are very, very imminent in terms of updates for QLEs and so forth. We've got a lot to share. Again, we are recording this session. We'll have it available as a resource for the community. Today's agenda, very quickly, we are going to cover Pennie's special enrollment period for 2022. We're going to spend some time talking about qualifying life events because, as you all know, as many of you know, Pennie doesn't go away just because open enrollment is closed. There are some new qualifying life events that are coming down the pike, as well as a new program that we're very excited about. It's called the Path to Pennie. It's in partnership with the Pennsylvania Department of Revenue, and we'll cover that and hopefully have time for questions and feedback. With that being said, we are entering Pennie's special enrollment period. And that special enrollment period is actually January to December for individuals who have qualifying life events outside of open enrollment. And of course, November 1st to January 15th will be our open enrollment again for 2023. Outside of open enrollment, Pennsylvanians can enroll and or change a plan if they have a qualifying life event. And that qualifying life event actually opens up a 60-day special enrollment period for them. And qualifying life events, or QLEs, are a changing circumstance. Things like getting married, having a baby, losing health coverage that can make you eligible for the special enrollment period, which allows you to enroll in health insurance outside of the yearly open enrollment period. And with that, we're going to be joined today by Pennie's assistant to our COO and our operations guru, Hannah Turner. And with that, Hannah, I'd like to welcome you to the Assister Lunch and Learn and thank you for spending some time with us today to explain QLEs and some of the new things coming down the pike.
Sure. Thank you all for having me. Appreciate it, Scott. Go ahead and move to the next slide. So as Scott was talking about, we have, now that we're outside of open enrollment, it's a good time to be talking about life events, and some of those result in a special enrollment period. That's what allows the customer to enroll or make changes to their plan outside of the open enrollment period. So some of the qualifying life events that do result in a special enrollment period, I think these are kind of a good summary here. We've got things that are losing your other health coverage. So losing job-based coverage, losing your eligibility for Medicaid or CHIP, or maybe someone who's aging out of like their parents' health plan. Changes to your household, so marriage, birth, adoption, death, those things always result in will get you in a special enrollment period. Some things about changing your residence, moving to or from, moving to Pennsylvania, become a new state resident. We'll do that, as well as there's a whole host of other qualifying events, including probably one of the more common would be when you have certain income changes that change your eligibility for financial assistance. Not just changing the amount of APTC that you might be eligible for, but like you become newly eligible for APTC, might be a qualifying life event for an SEP. So that's just a quick overview. If you go to the next slide, to our we've got a whole lot of FAQs out there about our special enrollment periods, but we do have some additional resources for you all if you go to the page on support pages here. You'll see a link to our quick reference guide. We have updated this SEP quick reference guide for 2022. It includes a few things. So this lists literally all of the possible special enrollment periods, who it's available to. Sometimes they're only available to people who are new to Pennie, who are not currently enrolled. Sometimes available to people who are currently enrolled. When can they get coverage, whether there's documentation requirements, and any sort of additional information. So a lot of stuff there. It's going to be really useful. It's only, I think, 3 pages, but it's a handy thing for you guys to have around. So we wanted to take today and talk through a couple of life events. We took 2 of the more common, our most common life events, and walk through what that looks like from the system experience, and talk a little about the process. So we're going to start first with our life events that don't require documentation for you to shop. So for this first one, we're going to start with the loss of MEC, or loss of other coverage. It's definitely one of the most popular SEPs. We'll then talk, after we go through this process where for a life event that doesn't require documentation, we'll then do the same thing but for a life event that does require documentation, so you can understand what that process looks like, and how that works, and what additional steps that require. So for our first round of, sorry, if you go back 1 slide. Okay. So our first step for doing the submitting a life event is always going to be submitting a new eligibility application. That should be your first step for anything. We do any demographic updates for customers. You need to submit a new application. You need to change the income by $1. You go and you update the application. So that should always be your first step. Depending upon where the customer is in their application process, you might have an edit application on their dashboard in the next steps section, which you see here at the top, but you always have the ability on the dashboard in their little eligibility section. You see the button at the bottom where it says edit application. That's your other go-to place. The nice thing about the edit application is you're not starting from scratch, right? It creates a new application, but pre-populates it with all the information that you had available, previously supplied. And tip, if you haven't figured this out, you can jump ahead into the first section that you need to make an update in your application. So there's once you have jumped ahead, then you do need to go page by page to the rest of the application. This is a little bit, because of the way the application is designed, you have to, based on the answers to some of your questions, that determines whether you get presented with certain questions later. So that's why you do have to go page by page. But if you were, for example, only updated the income, you could jump straight to the income section and then page through. So let's say you're going to go ahead and update your eligibility application with whatever your situation is here. In this case, we're actually going to be applying for the first time because we're losing our other coverage. So as always, after you submit your eligibility application, you'll get your eligibility summary. In this case, Rhubarb here is eligible for tax credits. Great. Next step, you go, so now that you have submitted your update eligibility application, next step is you need to report a life event. And as always, on the dashboard, that next step section will tell you kind of what you need to do next. And you'll see now it says that you need to confirm an event and shop. You'll also notice that the action label of that button is going to correlate to the actions when you go to through your sister portal to look at your clients. You can actually sort them by those different actions. So it's a good kind of step to remember to compare there. So since we're outside of, sorry, go back, you're ahead of me, Scott. Go back 1 more, please. Since you're outside of enrollment, we do have to do that special enrollment period. There are some times that you're going to skip this step because the system may have already figured out that you get an SEP based on what you've submitted on your eligibility application. And these scenarios that we're first ones that we're doing here, that's not the case. So it is going to then ask you to tell the system what the event was. But we'll talk about what that looks like automation a little bit later. Okay, next one. So when you go to report your life event, you're going to get a list of a whole lot of different reasons. These are all sorts of qualifying life events. And you need to pick the appropriate one. Each one has some different rules associated with them, but that's where you would go back to your handy quick reference guide and see kind of the different rules. And in the additional information you might need. What's listed in this dropdown is also going to vary depending upon the circumstances of the customer. So whether the customer is currently enrolled or is not currently enrolled will also change which life events they might be eligible for. So just take note of that. You might not always see the exact same population of our list of life events populated here. But you're going to pick the right event and you're going to put the event date in there as well. Most QLEs can only be reported on or after the event date. So if you think about it, you can't report a birth before the child's born, right? So birth is one you can't report in advance, but some that you are able to report in advance. So if you go ahead to the next screen, we're actually going to be doing two that happen to our most popular ones that do allow you to also report in advance. So for this example, for our event that doesn't require documentation, we're doing loss of MEC. And you see I did put a future event date in here, and so that is permissible for this one, as is our new Pennsylvania resident example coming up. You always get a chance to confirm and change the event date. Be sure you get that correct, because if you get denied, you're going to have to do the whole process again. So now that you've submitted it, oh, you're ahead of me back. Sorry. Thank you. So now that you've submitted it, you'll see that this, because there's no documentation required for a life loss of MBC, you're going to immediately be approved, because you can see right now, next steps, shop for a plan. So, and we actually, because it's been approved, we actually already have at the top the little yellow banner that tells us how much time we have left to enroll. The amount of time you have left to enroll is based on the event date, not the date you reported. So we reported, the reason I have 73 days left is because I reported an event in the future, and my shopping period is always going to be up 60 days past the date of the event. So that's the latest that I can shop. So if I were to report the event, report the life event, 59 days after the date of the event, you would only have a 1-day shopping period. So remember, it's not always 60 days to shop. It's 60 days from the date of the event, not when you report it. So once it's approved, you go in and you go shop for plans, just like usual. That SEP is going to remain open with that shop for plans button until you have either the time period has lapsed or until you have completed shopping for medical and or dental. So you go through the normal shopping, and then depending upon the customer's current status, if they're newly enrolling, they might want to make a binder payment, or if they're just making a change to their current enrollment, they may not need that. But usual shopping for plans. And then go ahead to the next slide. You know that it is over because you no longer see the shop for plans button at the top, and that yellow banner telling you how much time you had left to shop, that's gone. So if you had then another life event, you'd have to go through that same process again. So let's go and now look at what it looks like a little bit differently here when you have a life event for when documentation is required. So we're going to use the another popular one, which is someone's changing of residency, or in this case, moving to Pennsylvania. So same first step, right? We have to submit our eligibility application. As always, that should be your first step. You always submit a new eligibility application, and then you can navigate ahead. Don't forget to use the left navigation to jump ahead to wherever it is that you need to make an update to the application. Once you've submitted it, you get your eligibility results. That's, the normal there. So then step 2 is now we would need to go to the next slide. We need to report our life event. So again, because there's no automatic life event applied, we have this option here in the confirm event button. So go ahead and click that. So we've got Amos here. Amos is going to be reporting moving to Pennsylvania on the next slide. And again, this is one that allows us a future event date. So we're going to say Amos is moving in the end of March. So that, again, is allowed to report in the future. If you reported a baby in a future date, it would deny, because it would tell you can't report those in advance. So go ahead and we would submit that. And now, because we've picked a reason that does require documentation, you're going to see that the next steps doesn't say shop for plans like it did last time. It's going to say you need to provide us documentation to verify your eligibility for the life event. This is different than when a customer has to provide documents to verify their eligibility, maybe income or lawful presence or things like that, right? Those documents, you get conditional eligibility, and you have a period of time to provide those documents. In other words, you aren't stopped from continuing to enroll because you have to provide income documents. However, with a life event, when that life event reason does require documentation, you cannot move forward until you've provided that documentation and that documentation's been approved. So remember, it's a similar process that you're going to upload documents and have them reviewed by the Pennie customer service team, but you cannot move forward until that has been approved for a life event. So go to the next page, and we can show you so uploading documents is going to look very familiar to when you have application documents you need to upload. Those would be under the application verifications tab. In this case, though, since AMIS does have a life event that needs documents, we now have a qualifying life event tab, and you'll see that the life event reason, the new Pennsylvania resident, is not verified, and so I have the ability to upload documents there. Definitely should look to the FAQs for some more guidance on documents if you have any questions on that. This example showing a lease that starts, with a future date there. So once you submit that, you will see that the document's been uploaded, and then you have to wait for approval. Again, this is where it's always helpful to monitor that next steps and that action button. So you could have one of three different options here. So the first thing you're going to see is this first option here where it says the documents are under review. So the action button is going to take you back to go view those documents. So that just means it's pending review. Once it has been reviewed and actions taken, you're going to get either the second or the third option. Hopefully it's the third. The second option, it says, you're back to having to upload documents. It's been rejected, whatever you provided. Maybe you provided maybe it wasn't even legible or something that wasn't relevant to the life event. The documents would be rejected, and there would be a notice with some notes explaining what information is needed, and you'd have to go back and upload documents again. Once your documents are approved, once your documents are approved, you get the last button here, which is the shop for plans. So shop for plans is the goal button that you want to always have. That's where you want to get to. And you would also see on the documents page, a little bit small there, but you would see that document that previously had said not verified is now verified, green check box. So that's really the only distinction there between our life events that require documentation and those that don't, is that process of uploading the documents and then monitoring for the different statuses. Because now that that life event's been approved, you're just going to go shop for plans, just like the last example, binder payment if needed, and you're all done. Go to the next slide. Yep, so once it's completed and you've completed all of your shopping, you would see back to now the edit application. You don't have a shop for plans button anymore, but you can go and report another life event. There's no limit to how many life events you can report throughout the year, but it always starts with that same process of submitting your eligibility application. So there is a new life event that results in a special enrollment period for this year for 2022, and it's for customers who make up to or less than or equal to 150% of FPL for their income. So if we go to the next slide, talk a little bit about how that works this year. So who is eligible for this SEP? Customer has to be eligible for APTC and have household income of 150% or lower federal poverty level. So there's some income levels for you based on household size. They do have to be eligible for APTC. So if you have someone who is below 150% FPL but is eligible for Medicaid, they would not be eligible for the SEP. Okay. Go back, you're not ready yet. Important other thing here is how to use this SEP. So this is brand new, and it's going to be a little bit different right now, depending upon what the customer's current status is. So if the customer is not enrolled currently, then this SEP is going to be granted automatically. So this is going to be one of those ones where you submit the application and the system's not going to ask you to report a life event. It's going to immediately identify this person as eligible and open up that SEP. However, for the customers that are currently enrolled, It's not yet automated. We do have automation coming for those folks in the summertime this year. For now, though, they are eligible, but you have to contact customer service, and then the Pennie representatives would be able to open up the SEP for those folks that are currently enrolled. So we're going to show you how you do it for folks who are not currently enrolled. Sorry, before we move off, so Tia has asked a good question here in the chat. The question is regarding the new SEP. If a customer has had a change in income and their current monthly income is below 150% of FPL, but their annual projected income would be above that, would they qualify based on monthly income, or is it projected annual income only? So Tia, the exchange would always look at your annual income, your projected annual income for the your eligibility for QHP. So that is not always the same as with Medicaid. So we should always be looking at your annual projected income for this purposes of this SEP. Okay, so we've got our example here of our test person, and as always, we start by updating our application. So do the good old edit application and go to the next step. You can, here's another example where you can kind of jump using that left navigation of your application to jump to the appropriate section that you want. In this case, maybe you need to go and update their income if needed, and then navigate through to the end, and you're going to sign and submit as usual. Sign and submit, get your eligibility results. Now, these folks who are APTC eligible and have our income of 150% of FPL or lower are going to be eligible for tax credits and most likely cost sharing reductions because of their income. So now when we go to, when you get the eligibility result, you go to your homepage and you will see that steps 2 and 3 have been completed for you. We see immediately we have the shop for plans button. And that's because the system automatically identified that that person is applying and is in that less than or equal to 150% of FPL and automatically reported that and approved it for you. So you just skipped steps 2 and 3 and moved right to step 4. This is, again, we're talking right now for our customers who are not currently enrolled. They maybe were enrolled on Pennie previously or have applied previously, but they're not currently enrolled. This is what the automation looks like for them now. You can also see, sorry, one back, please, on your screen, you can always go look on the application pages and you will see the life event there, reason at the bottom. So in this case, small says low FPL. That's what you're going to see for these folks who are getting the SEP due to the 150% of less of FPL. So, and thanks, just a chat reminder, yes, the 150% of FPL SEP is currently in effect. The new customer automation that we just walked through, new enrollee automation, that's already in effect. The current enrollees call our CSRs, have the instructions, they can approve it while you're on the phone and open up that shop for plans button. And then, so with that SEP, the customers can shop for a plan. Since they're not currently enrolled, they are able to enroll in any plan. When we do the automation for the current customers, the rules are a little bit different. So we'll go through that when we actually have the automation for them. But for now, the current customers, when you call Pennie customer service, they will open up plan shopping, and then the customers can change plans. Remember that these are customers with the 150% of FPL or lower. So these are folks who are eligible for the most generous cost sharing reduction levels. So we're most likely going to see those folks are going to be enrolling in silver level plans since they are eligible for that highest level of cost sharing reduction. And then again, the current customers do need to call and report the SEP. Note in the chat here about we're having some issues reporting that SEP through customer service, and that the reps told you to say exceptional circumstances. You should just have to say that that would work. Low income SEP would also work, should work. But Jacob, if you want to reach out with some details on those customers, that would just help us to reach out and do a little retraining. You shouldn't have to ask for exceptional circumstances.
But Hannah, just to clarify, based on Jacob's question, I think it's not in the list, right? It's an automated SEP, so it's not in the drop down. It's something that, and one of the reasons why it's not in the drop down is I think we determined that it would be difficult to word it correctly, right? So it just looks at the FPL. As long as the FPL is 150 and below for any household members, it's an automatic event.
Yes. So it is not something that you can self-service. You're never going to have that report your event and see that in a drop down ever. You're either going to be a new, not currently enrolled customer who goes through the application like this, and then it'll be automatically granted, or current customers, you'd have to call Pennie customer service, and then they would approve it based on the customer's income and eligibility. It is not self-reporting in that sense. You either get it through the automation or you call customer service. It's not going to be in those drop downs. And yes, it is active. We did go live with the automation of this. Goodness, was it just a week ago, maybe? For the new customer automation. But you should have been able to call as of end of January. Thanks, Scott. I think we got the all of the questions through the chat. I hope, unless somebody caught any that I missed.
Excellent, and thank you again, Hannah. That was wonderful information. While we have a minute or so left, I did want to point out that Pennie has a new program this year, our Path to Pennie. It's a program that we developed in partnership with the Pennsylvania Department of Revenue for this and future tax seasons, to basically connect with the uninsured Pennsylvanians that are interested in receiving information about how to acquire health insurance through Pennie. For those who indicate that they, their spouse, their dependents are uninsured through REV 1882, a tax form, they'll receive official notifications starting in April on how they can claim a Pennie account, an estimate of their financial assistance available to them, and information on how to enroll in health insurance through Pennie. In between now and April, if a customer had questions, or if they had questions about coverage, of course they're encouraged to reach out to our customer service center. But you'll also notice that we have this information available under Learn on Pennie.com. Under Learn, you'll see Path to Pennie, and we've got information available there that can help customers, as well as an example of REV 1882. We are receiving good feedback about this program. It's something that we're very excited about. And with that being said, I see we're a minute over, but we'd like to open it up for questions. If you have questions, please drop them in the chat. As always, you can email us if you need assistance with any type of customer issue, or if you're running into technical challenges, you can reach out to 844-844-4440. And of course, you can email us at sisters@pennie.com. Are there any questions? And again, just to remind everyone, we have recorded this session. As soon as we have the presentation polished up, we'll load it to our YouTube channel and share the link with everyone. So, all right. Well, thank you again, everyone. And thank you again for the tremendous work that you do in helping people get protected. Thank you again. I hope you have a great afternoon, a great rest of your week, and we'll be here to help if you need us. Thank you so much, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.